call to order the Town of Hopkinton Planning Board, Wednesday, September the 4th, and it's 7:02. The first item of business is approval of minutes from August 7th.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
There's a motion.
Second.
Have a second? Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, this might just be my lack of understanding of procedure, but my name isn't listed as member present on the minutes from last month.
I'll fix it.
Okay, cool. I'm listed in, like, it notes my comment.
Yeah.
You do.
I'm not on the.
Good catch. Thank you. So then we'll take a motion to amend the minutes of August 7th.
Make a motion to amend the minutes. Second.
Second, so all in favor? Aye. And so approval of the minutes then, are we all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The first, old business, there is none. New business, it's Tri-Star 2-lot minor subdivision. It's a preliminary plan stage AP 17, lot 16A-2, Sawmill Road. Tri-Star Construction is our applicant. You ready?
Good evening.
Good
Yes.
evening.
My name is Bill Dowdell, and I have with me the owner, Steve Coleman, owner of Tri-Star Construction. If you remember, we were here, I think it was in February, with the Goodwin Trust subdivision, and we divided 3 lots at the time, and on this side of the road. The Goodwins didn't want to get involved with tying the whole subdivision up with freshwater wetlands. So we had oversized what became lot 2A, 16, I guess it's 16A, lot 2, 2A. We had oversized the lot down closest to Moscow Brook, and the size of the lot at the time was 4.32 acres. The Goodwins simply wanted to dissolve their trust and move on. So we came in with a 3-lot subdivision. The lots that you see here on this plan, this was approved last February, I think it was recorded in March. And Steve came along and bought all 3 lots, and looking at the 4th lot, he was more than willing to go to wetlands for it. So we got involved with Scott Rabideau and had Scott come in May and flag the wetlands. It was going to be kind of a toss-up whether or not we could come up with enough high and dry land to subdivide the lot. What I wanted to submit is Scott's report. We have the wetlands flag, and his report's dated May 30th, 2019. And this is for the board's review and for your records.
Okay, thank you.
It just so happens that, yes, we could further subdivide, and that's why we were before you tonight to take the 4.32 acre lot, which was lot 3 under the Goodwin subdivision. So I'm calling it lot 1 and lot 2 on your subdivision. This lot consists of 4.32 acres. We submitted not a freshwater wetlands application, but a redesign of the septic system for what was lot 3 for the Goodwins. Moved the house over to the south and applied to DEM for a new lot, and sure enough, they approved it. We're still not altering within 200 feet of the river. So square footage wise, we were just high enough to be able to slide the house to the south that had previously been approved, and we made enough room on lot 2 on your subdivision for a house and a septic system. And those are all permitted with DEM. Right now, Steve has 2 houses under construction on the lots, 1 and 2 off to the south of this particular lot. So we're before you tonight to simply add this lot line. And we have enough suitable acreage in both lots.
So, can you go back to your first one?
Sure. This was the one approved in February.
Right.
So we took this house, slid it over here to this corner, redesigned the septic system, and basically we're putting a lot line right in here and putting the additional house there.
Okay.
But this was oversized intentionally because the Goodwins didn't want to get caught up with any wetland application. And come to find out, at the time we were working with the Goodwins, we never did have a wetland flag. We just said, stay away. So, and then Steve, pushed ahead and actually had the wetland edge flag and came up with enough suitable area to make this lot split.
Okay. Any other questions? Ron? You look like you have something to share.
Actually, I got a broken down of words.
Yeah.
Looks like they've done their due diligence and crossed all the Ts and dotted all the Is. I seem to think this is gonna fly all right.
Karen?
I have no comments or objections.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Thanks for the work.
I don't remember because of the state counts all the acre, all the square footage of the lot as needs, toward the minimum, so, I mean, that was, I believe that's a year or 2 old, I think they changed it. This person will not be able to, probably will not be able to put in a garage or maybe a small shed over there. It's legal, as far as, to the extent of my knowledge.
Just clarification on your comment. The concern you had is that the wetlands are such a large portion.
Right.
Yeah, because that's.
Jim? Jim, anything to add?
So, as straightforward as you can get.
Yeah.
The town of Hopkinton subdivision regulations,
This is 3 to 4. This is considered a minor subdivision?
still going.
Okay.
We don't require a new lot to be all high and dry land. Wetlands can be a part of the minimum acreage of the lot. That's, other towns are different. Some towns, want no wetlands part of the minimum lot area. So that's fine according to our regulations in this town.
So just as a point of reference, Emily, had this become a major subdivision, then we would be getting into low and moderate income housing counts and number of, right? But because this is still considered a minor, we're good. We're good, we're following our current regulations where it can be as stated. So that was my only thought when I looked at it, was just going back to check our regs, that we were still within the minor subdivision.
Still
So,
within one.
okay, and there's no extra road created or anything, it's on a current road, town road,
Yep, all frontage on the town.
all frontage on a town road, so it's pretty straightforward from that point of view.
Or the simplification, yeah.
So my only question is, since we don't have Alan, he's normally our guy, is this the one that didn't have a signature? No, maybe it's the other one. Okay, it's the other one that didn't have, there was a place that didn't have a signature on it. That's our next application, no, that's fine. So we're all okay with this, this one does have our signatures and whatnot, so as far as a preliminary plan, we're good? Okay, all right. So, so part of this and us making a recommendation of approving the preliminary plan, we have to specifically state that we've met each of these requirements. in our motion. And we also need to say something about local and state permits, right? We need to state that at this point?
You could certainly make that part of your motion.
Okay.
The applicant will,
Contingent upon receiving,
all of the federal, state, and local
okay.
approvals. You may delegate final approval to the administrative officer if you so choose to do so.
I think that would be, I'm okay with that. But before we do a motion, I just want to kick it to the floor, just make sure if anybody has anything to say. So, members of the public, anyone who would care to be heard regarding this application, now is the time. Okay. So, entertain a motion.
Okay. Broken out in words again.
Very good.
I'd like to make a motion that we offer a positive viewpoint approval on this. It meets each subdivision, is consistent with the comprehensive plan. Each lot in the subdivision shall conform to the standards and provisions of the Hopkinton zoning ordinance. There will be no significant negative environmental impacts for the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions of approval. The subdivision as proposed shall not, let me start over, number 4. The subdivision as proposed will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development that buildings on those lots according to the pertinent regulations and building standards would be impractical. All proposed land developments and subdivision lots shall have adequate and permanent legal access to a public street. Each subdivision shall provide for safe circulation of pedestrian and vehicular traffic, for surface water runoff control, for suitable building sites, and for preservation of natural or historical cultural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community. The design and location of streets, building lots, utilities, drainage improvements, and other improvements in each subdivision shall minimize flooding and soil erosion. I'd like to add that we would like to see this go before the, I forgot the, just,
And that we are going to delegate the final plan approval to the administrative officer.
yes, so we're going to delegate the final approval to the administrative officer.
And this is all, and our approval is contingent upon all state and local permits.
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion in a second. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, just do a pause. Mr. Diorio? Okay. We're going to take a brief pause for our chair to come back.
You can. I'm going to dismiss it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Applause.
How's everyone?
Good. So we continue.
Yes, please.
All right. The next item of new business is the Salesi's 3-lot minor subdivision. It's a preliminary plan stage, AP6, lot 36, Alton Bradford Road. Peter and Susan Salesi's, did I say it correctly?
Sales's.
Oh, Sales's, well, I stand corrected, thank you, Sales's, are the applicants, thank you.
And everything else correct on this one, we forgot to sign the plans. So it's
Actually, that would be myself that I'm gonna take credit for noticing that it wasn't
Okay.
signed.
Stipulate-
So-
I will stipulate that I didn't sign, and I don't have Rich Kushan with me tonight, I can sign, but the PLS stamp, you have to wait until they're ready. Salis presently own a house that is located right here, high above the river, on the southeast side of the site. It's a 21.63 acre parcel, lot 6, lot 36. It's kind of a unique piece of property in that you have Walton Bradford Road running along the west edge, and you have some actual rock formations high above the river. These little knolls are ledge outcrops. And if you take a look at the soil testing that we did, we ran into a lot of rock. We were able to find a large enough area with enough overburden to support 2 4-bedroom septic systems, but you can see with all the ledge testing, it took us a full day of soil testing just for the 2 lots. The proposal is to split 2 2-acre lots right along the north edge of the site. And if you go to sheet 2, you can see the 2 proposed lots. Because of the actual physical nature of the property and the rock outcrops, we stayed out of the 200-foot riverbank jurisdiction, and we were really subject to wherever we could find successful soil testing for the proposed homes. So as you can see, we have 239 square frontage proposed for the first lot, and another 226 for the second lot, meeting all your zoning requirements. They're actually oversized lots. They're 88,000 square feet, and the next one is 113, really to make the lot lines 90 degrees to the road and take the proposed lots all the way to the river. The Salises wanted to keep 17 acres with the existing home. And I'm not sure exactly what the plans are, but eventually they may come in for a new home or something like that, but they wanted to retain this southerly portion for the family. So that's pretty much it. I don't know if any of you had a chance to walk the land at all, but it's, you can see the ledge outcrops as you approach the river.
The well's gonna be deep.
I imagine there's plenty of houses on this side of the road.
Yeah.
Bill, any consideration given to retaining the vegetation in the front yard setback area? This is a vegetated site, it's a vegetated strip of roadway. I would be suggesting to my colleagues that we consider the imposition of a no-cut zone for those front yard setbacks, excluding the area of the driveways, of course.
Yeah, I would say like a no clear cut
Yeah.
would be appropriate. You know, the underbrush wouldn't really be.
No, not interested in underbrush.
And it would add to the buffering of the houses from the highway. It's a pretty substantial highway in that area.
May I ask a question? So, I'm gonna ask questions there. So this is 17 acres, so you have the 2. I guess my concern is the whole minor versus major with this leftover material, leftover area. And if it would get into, because I think some of our concern of the original low and income housing was a developer coming in and saying, oh, I'm just gonna do 2. And then they come in, oh, I'm just gonna do 2. And so it leads to hitting that criteria of a major without having to somehow subvert the low and income housing requirement. And so my concern is this leftover acreage. And so I'm just throwing that out there because I could conceive of, and maybe you can tell me otherwise, so how many additional lots do you think that could be carved out of this leftover 17 acres of this one?
I can tell you right now, we have approximately 500 feet, 520 left of frontage, divided by 225, so the maximum would be 3 more.
So that's 5.
That would be a total, that would be the maximum
Yeah.
without building a town road.
Right.
Or a
right.
residential compound.
Or
So I think the concern is legitimate, and if I understand our regulations correctly, Jim, please step in if I misspeak, is that we view this cumulatively. So if they come back and they suddenly trip over what would be a major, or they invoke the low and moderate threshold, that's it, they're captured. I don't mean to use the term in a hostage connotation, but what we sought to do with that regulation was to eliminate the incremental submissions. So as long as the applicant is aware of that, I think you've put them on notice appropriately.
Yes.
Okay.
Jim, what do you think?
Okay. That was my only concern when I looked at it. And can we talk about, so the rocks, that's just ledge, that's not anything to do with historical Indian mounds or anything like that?
I didn't see any of those cars
Okay.
sticking up or anything like that. I don't think there's any significance to them. They have the same thing over here in Pigeon Hill.
Okay.
Planning board members, any other questions or comments? No? Go around. Any questions or comments here? Young man? Anything to add? Jim, anything on your end? Okay. Planning board members, I've been prepared to entertain a motion if you're so inclined.
So we're just gonna take how the practice go?
Got a deep laugh. Good times coming. Okay, I make a motion that we offer a favorable advisory opinion on this. The applicant has done due diligence. Each subdivision shall be consistent with the requirements of the Hopkinton Comprehensive Community Plan and/or shall satisfactorily address the issues where there may be inconsistencies. Each lot in the subdivision shall conform to the standards and provisions of the Hopkinton zoning ordinance. There will be no significant negative environmental impacts for the proposed development as shown on the final plan with all required conditions of approval. Subdivision as proposed will not result in the creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development that building on those lots according to the pertinent regulations and building standards would be impractical. All proposed land developments and all subdivision lots shall have adequate and permanent legal access to a public street. Each subdivision shall provide for safe circulation of pedestrian and/or vehicular traffic, for surface water runoff control, for suitable building sites, and for preservation of natural, historical, or cultural features that contribute to the attractiveness of the community. The design and location of streets, building lots, utilities, drainage improvements, and other improvements in each subdivision shall minimize flooding and soil erosion.
And would you like to add to your motion that the applicant will work out the details of the no clear zone for the front yard setbacks with the planner and front.
Yes, I like that.
Very good, and you're prepared to also indicate that we can delegate final plan approval to the administrative officer.
Yes, I like that as well.
Pending all state and federal permits?
That's good, excellent. Oh, we have a motion.
Second.
We have a second, further discussion. I would only add that it's not an advisory opinion, it's actually an approval.
Oh, okay.
That's okay, no problem. We'll note that for the record.
Should we?
So we had a motion, we had a second, we had any further discussion, anybody else have anything else to add? All in favor? Anyone opposed? Thank you. Thank you.
Now,
Sir,
we have to ask her a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Is there time for public discussion?
we can entertain that now.
Okay, thank you very much.
I apologize for overlooking your hand.
I'll leave it up.
You can tell them.
Go right up. Al, you're not paying attention to me.
I'm Moji Friel. I have a home at 10 Pigeon Hill Cove, and I'm here to add some levity. Will any of the wells built with these subdivisions affect my little well on 10 Pigeon Hill Cove? That's my question.
We can direct that to Mr. Dondell, the engineer.
Thank you.
Well, for the existing homes right here, that's an existing use. Our wells are proposed here and here. I would say, I don't know exactly where your home is, but it's got to be 1,000 feet away. So I think any impact would be minimal.
Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to pose a question.
Very good, thank you, and once again, my apologies.
Have a good evening.
May I just a point of order? Do we have the correct motion for the first applicant?
We didn't.
Yes.
We did.
We didn't approve, we did, as,
So we go back and review the tape, if in fact, the term advisory opinion is used.
I don't believe it was, I think it was the second time we said that.
I think we're all in
On
agreement.
the second one when you said that, but.
Yeah, just point of order, just to make sure that we had approved it, because we would hate to have to bring that back.
So you might have to vote again on it?
Yeah, no, I'm just making sure it was clear, so.
I think the intent.
Okay.
The rules provide that if the board didn't make a decision in a certain number of days, it's approved.
Oh,
We're gonna-
okay, all right, okay, all right, there we go. So,
Well, thank you.
thanks.
Bill, thank you.
Solicitor's report,
Thank you.
planner's report.
I'd just like to mention that Chairman DiOrio has spoken to Scott Millar, who used to work at DEM. He's now the lead on the Exeter Planning Board. He's with Grossmont, Rhode Island, actually. And they were talking about having a workshop, scheduling a workshop with the planning board to just go over whatever points the board might want to look at with respect to solar arrays. Now, some of the things that they've been talking about is vesting of applications would be one thing. What Scott's opinion on that. And Scott is also prepared to talk about the value of forests in mitigating, climate change. And so any other topics that the board would like to delve into, probably would be appropriate for a workshop. So maybe we can get a date together. It's good with everybody. Now, the second and the fourth Tuesdays of the month are not good with Scott, but I believe everything else is open.
It's like 6 to 8 o'clock time frame or the time frame?
We could start earlier. We could start.
Start at 7.
We could start at 7 if you like, or 6. Want to make sure that everybody, I don't know, we don't want to throw people off too much. Normally, we have our meetings at 7 o'clock, and I don't know.
Well, we can have a window open and turn it up with that to see how it works, right? I'm open.
Sure.
so like coming up, that would be like the 10th and the 24th, right?
Yeah, those days are no good.
Those are no good, okay?
I know that town council meets on Mondays, zoning board meets on Thursdays, like Tuesdays and Wednesdays would be open.
Okay,
And I think we should be moving into October.
okay,
That seemed to be
So you
best
could
for
choose
Scott.
maybe like
okay.
the third Wednesday or something, you know, agree.
Tuesdays work better for me than Wednesdays.
Can we avoid Scott's 2 and 4?
We can.
So that would
How
be
about
the
the
8th?
first Tuesday?
8? Oh, I'm sorry,
The first.
first.
The first or the
First
second?
Tuesday.
People with that.
October.
October 1st, okay.
Yeah, that's fine.
And let me just elaborate a little bit more. Jim and I have been talking about this. Jim was involved in one of Scott's presentations. I lent a hand at one point. The focus of those presentations was predominantly directed at planning board, zoning board, conservation commission members. I thought the topics were very pertinent to what we were experiencing and will be experiencing again. But then recently, if you followed the local Gazette, Scott recently did one of these in Richmond for a private group who was wrestling with some solar issues. And it dawned on me that, okay, so maybe the focus of these kinds of presentations need not only be directed at volunteers serving on boards. And I think many of the topics that Scott covered would be welcome as discussion points, not only for our board, but for those that attend our regular meetings in this regard. So I think there was a lot to be learned. Scott is in my opinion, he's a fantastic presenter, very level, very, he's not pro, he's not anti, he's looking at all the angles. I just think it would be a good thing to hear. So,
Can I add,
if you're
can I
inclined
add
to
a
endorse
topic?
it,
Can I add a topic that I'd like?
so what I would suggest, yeah, absolutely. What I would suggest is we try and get that to Scott before the meeting
Right.
so he can integrate it into his presentation.
Would it be amenable to do it now? Discuss it?
Yes.
Can we talk about decommissioning costs and what Gross Smart thinks about that in terms of, because I think that's a big, gorilla in the room for a lot of these is, we have an estimate, folks have an estimate. Are we way off what everybody else is doing? Are we way low? How much liability do we have? And what do we do?
Scott is prepared to discuss that, but perhaps we could underline that for him. His approach is a little bit different.
Okay.
His approach, just to sidetrack you for a moment, is not about the estimate. It's about the fact that these are LLCs, and when the time comes, he thinks they're just gonna be in the wind. So, all the more reason why we should be concerning folks.
Right,
But,
right,
yes, if we could underline the decommissioning, I know he's ready to jump on that topic.
right.
And if anyone else has any thoughts, please either get them to me or get them to Jim, we'll get them to
Can we elaborate on Amy's idea? I brought this up a few meetings ago. To me, it seems appropriate not to get an estimate or try and foresee what's going to happen in 20 years, but what would happen today, in October or September 2018. What would it cost to pull those things out of the ground right now on a per panel basis?
Okay.
Say it costs us $100 to get rid of each one.
Yeah.
If we integrated that in there and there was some sort of an escrow fund that they would contribute to every pay period that they get from National Grid or whoever's buying electricity, that they add to it. When it's all said and done, the LLC or whoever the landowner is would get that back if there's any money left over or whatever. It's a tough sell. None of us have a crystal ball.
We should certainly delve into the topic. The larger concern after chatting with Scott a little bit is no matter how much money we put aside, the LLC responsible for actually implementing the decommissioning, they might be somebody that we don't know.
It could be sold tomorrow.
And I guarantee they're going to be sold many times before. And so those funds, while they might be around, if there's any additional expense, that entity is, they're gone, they're in the wind, they don't have anything invested. That's my big concern.
Might as well, that's why I brought up the point of possibly,
Let's dig into it.
you know, like 1% of their gross revenue goes towards keeping it mission and an escrow funds
That we have.
that we have, or that somebody has.
No.
So I would think we would have. I mean, ultimately, the town of Hopkinton is going to be the recipient of all of this stuff,
Right.
good or bad.
It's an excellent discussion point. I think we should flesh it out.
One of the, and I don't know if this would be applicable to what you would like to present, but one of the concerns that I have is we do have these developers come in and they sell their story and we buy their story and money and decommissioning and all that other crap involved. But once the trucks roll in, they break the promise and you can see these things from the road, you can see them from the highway. You know, they're not supposed to see them from their houses, but here they are seeing it from their houses. What do you do when you have no recourse when unnecessary forest is cut down and all those damages are done? You know?
I do.
And we changed the ordinance though, Caroline, for that. We changed for them to be able to come before us a year after. Didn't that go through? Isn't there an additional statement within our ordinance regarding coming back before the board?
We have one particular
Right?
part going on.
Coming back before the board for what?
If, for review, if we say that we can see it from a backyard and if we weren't supposed to, I thought we had within a year for them to come back before us.
That was the recent approval, but I don't think that that's a blanket statement.
Correct.
On Main Street, that was a condition.
Okay.
I think what you might be getting at, and it has been on my mind, is that the town doesn't like issue a permit for these at the end. You know, like when you build a house, there's a CO. Somebody goes in, checks around, says, yeah, you did that, you did this, you did this, here's your CO. These projects, does anybody say, here's the plan, here's the project, everything looks right, you can take your plug and go like this into the grid? Does anybody do that?
Yeah, they have to get a building permit to construct these things.
And does somebody sign off at the end?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And in addition to the construction, the actual construction, the electrical inspectors and whatnot, the overall plan has to be consistent with what the planning board approved in terms of vegetation and everything. So there's a couple of checks there.
Okay, so who's doing that? Are you doing it?
Yeah, and I'm talking specifically to the Palmer Circle
Uh-huh.
catastrophe over there.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
So, you know, they came before us and hats off to you, go ahead, knock yourself out, it sounds like a great idea. And after all is said and done, the drainage is terrible. It's encroaching on the homeowner's driveway. And they cut down too many trees. And they stood there and lied and said, you can't see it from the highway, you can't see it from the house. And you can, you can. It is too late. So that, what I'm wondering is, how do we get involved to the point where they won't be able to do that? They didn't need to cut down those trees. They said they weren't going to cut down
They
those trees.
started clearing before.
They did, they all did.
But they can't, so.
Wait, first of all, we don't want to get
Yeah,
too close
yeah,
to a
yeah.
specific application, right?
But that's,
It's not that kind of
there's no
discussion.
project manager, there's no neutral party saying, this is what the town approved, and this is what they're doing, and you know, no Crossman Engineering saying,
Like an owner's rep.
you can't be cutting down that area of trees, or you did cut down those trees, you need to not do that anymore, and you know, as a matter of fact, here's your fine for doing it, but you know, once those activities take place, there is no recourse. You're not gonna get that land coverage back, you know? So that's my concern, you know, we can approve all these things all we want, but it seems like we're just gonna push it to the edge. And,
So that might be a little bit outside of the discussion that Scott can legitimately unless you have some idea how to lead
Well,
that
I-
into a presentation.
Well, I just want to say that we as a town, myself, am very deeply involved in all of the construction of these projects, okay? Without mentioning them, specific projects or specific problems with any projects. I can talk to you individually and tell you exactly what I'm doing on all of them. Sherry, our building and zoning official, is also working with me on this. So there are town people looking at these things. And with respect to, I can tell you, I'll tell you this in general terms, okay? Drainage problems will be solved, okay? We're working on it. They'll be solved or they won't turn any juice on out there. And they know how I am. And believe me, I tell you, Crossman is on these projects right now. We're looking at all of them. I even had a meeting with another one. They haven't even really started yet building it, but I met with them and cautioned them as to the pitfalls that they're likely to have going forward. I mentioned, be cautious on clearing, be cautious on parking on main thoroughfares, and things of that nature. We're revisiting fences. Fire departments, fire marshals have their own opinions by code, and that's going to trump anything the planning board has to say. I'm sure you're aware of that. So I've had a number of meetings on a lot of projects, and I can't really say, to be in all honesty, I can't say that any project has really turned out bad to this point. And the ones that we've had problems on, we are on top of them, and we're going to make sure that they're rectified. And so, we've got Crossman working on these things as well. I think we need to bring Crossman in on all of our solar projects, going forward in the future. I'm sure you can appreciate that this solar wave hit us all at once. I mean, it came from out of nowhere, and everybody had to have these things built yesterday. And so there was a lot of pressure, and even when you have a split council, some of them want them, some of them don't want them. Whatever you do, you're going to be in the outs with somebody. I try to approach my job as a technician.
Yeah.
I go by the book. You either have the stuff. If you have the stuff, it moves forward to the next workstation, and if you don't, it don't. I'm not judgmental. I don't care what the town council says or what they do. That's up to them. I run the ship. I steer the ship to whatever port they want to go to. And I tell the applicants the same thing. And it's all the standard line with me, is that here's the rules and regulations, here's the solar ordinance, that's what we're going by. I say. So I really don't take any nonsense from anybody, to be honest with you. And
I
I'm
wish
not
there was
going-
some way to find them so that,
I was just gonna say, is there a
so that,
schedule of fines?
yeah, there's more incentive. Because I know you're like a pit bull. And I completely believe that you couldn't do any more than you possibly can to cover these things. I'm asking that there be some kind of, money moves everything, right? I'm wishing there was some kind of an incentive, like if you do that, you're gonna get fined X amount of dollars, per day, or, just like anybody else would be fined, It would incent them, and in one of the projects, there was a little budget of 20 grand put aside, so that the neighborhood can come back and say, how about these trees? What do you guys want to do with the landscaping? And when I go by that, I'm like, that's not a lot of money. And they were saying, hey, let's mitigate this, because we were saying 30,000, So that's not a lot of money to fix that kind of a thing, and I would hope that these professionals would be a little more ethical, but you can't bank on it, because they're meant for the
That
corner.
brings us back to my best friend in the world, the performance bond. If they have to post a big fat performance bond, if I say to you, Carol, I want you to do this, you say, all right, you're gonna give me $100,000 to do it. And if you don't do it, I keep the $100,000. That's,
And I don't want to drill
That's-
down
that's-
too much more, I don't want
Understood.
to, yeah,
you know,
I get that.
if they have that, and say, no, now it's not just the contractor, because the contractor has financial backers.
Mhm.
So they're gonna say, hey, you told these people you're gonna do this, they got a big pile of our money,
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It gives us a little more leverage.
Why don't we make some notes on these topics and at Scott's meeting, which I think might be a little bit better venue for this.
Totally.
We can ask Scott some of these questions and we can have some dialogue between ourselves. It's a workshop.
Yeah.
The ideal forum for that.
When we review projects as a major land development project, and we follow our subdivision regulations, there is, right in the subregs, any violation of an approval, there's a fine there. I think it's $500 a day or something like that. So it's there, and we have used it as, in the past. I can think of a project down the street, not a solar project, we've used it on a subdivision. And that gets their attention. So when we do it that way, it's right in our subdivision regulations that we can find. When we start doing things like development plan review, I'm not sure if I really get the teeth there, but any violation, any project that's built that doesn't conform to the plans that you folks approve is a zoning violation. And we can take, action against them. Or just refuse to turn the juice on. I mean, we have leverage over these folks. As soon as you, like you said, the CO is the ultimate leverage, okay? We don't sign off until it conforms to the plan.
Yeah.
Simple as that. So.
Can I say one more topic? Just where it's all going in terms of his view of the market for solar and the appetite for, just an understanding of National Grid.
That is
that's,
being discussed.
because
The pipeline is only so big.
it's only so big, are we there? Are we
Yes.
50%
Yes,
there?
there are many projects that are being held up because there's no more room.
So,
The grid can't be upgraded.
so I would like us to hear that in our workshop.
Another thing that
That is
Because-
true. That is true.
Because then that's important for the public to hear, for us to hear, to have a workshop to talk about that.
So maybe financing and the whole grid network, I forget exactly which words he used, but we did touch upon that topic. The pipeline. the
Are we
grid
done?
pipeline and infrastructure.
Oh, we got the saturation.
Yeah.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that there are some projects where infrastructure needs to be improved and they're removed from the place where National Grid wants to actually do it. But don't forget, National Grid doesn't really want to upgrade their network piecemeal. One piece here, one piece over here, they want the global perspective, but Jim's point is right on target. This thing has happened so fast that these projects are now scattered all over the planet. And that now there's no global approach to upgrading the grid. So it wouldn't surprise me if National Grid threw out the red flag and said, guys, you've got to calm down here because we don't have a plan.
So I'd like his perspective on that, just in terms of just to hear.
There's two things happening right now. Number one, what you just said, is that it is becoming prohibitively costly to interconnect these things to the grid. Either the three-phase lines are too long, and/or the substations are at capacity and the cost to upgrade them is too great. Okay, that's one thing that's happening. Another thing that I just heard is happening is you have ISO New England, which is over National Grid. And this was mentioned at the last solar meeting that we had at the school, is that because of the abundance of wind power and solar power right now, when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining, they have to have backup capacity, okay, in the grid somewhere. And ISO New England is trying to figure this all out now. So they kind of, from what I understand, they're putting the brakes on from way up at the top level too, until they figure this out. Because they could find themselves with production shortages severely should something happen. So they haven't figured, it came upon everybody too fast, and nobody's prepared. So they're all kind of like taking a little breather.
Well, Sheen is going to not meet her goals.
Okay, so good. Are we good for October 1?
October 1st.
7.
How about
7.
How about a venue?
The first.
First Tuesday in October is what we were doing?
Well-
Because that's the second Tuesday.
My suspicion is that once this
No,
hits
the first
the
in October.
agenda,
The first of October, first of October.
First of October,
Right.
which is a Tuesday.
Right.
Well, you see the capacity of the room, and I think it says, what, 75 persons back there.
Yeah.
And again, I would hate to have 80 or 90 people here and say, oh, I can't hear Scott's presentation, or I can't hear the discussion. So, I mean, I wouldn't want that to happen. I'd rather have it here, to be honest with you, it's a lot easier on us having it here, but
I agree.
I can't predict the turnout. And so we can have it at the school. I'll check the availability of the school, I haven't done that yet. So we'll see.
All right, let's look into that. I think out of an abundance of caution, as much as I hate that place.
Can we just do something differently with the lighting? Can we just?
Yeah,
up-
sort of-
up
Well,
the-
you did it at the town
You didn't,
hall.
I did, but it was awful. They need to just up the whole,
That sounds.
the lighting of everything. If it was just ambient lighted, like natural, not natural, but if the house lights were up, I think it would have been better. I think the problem is they still had the house lights down.
Yeah, the glare was offensive.
Yeah.
Oh, see.
That's not gonna happen. No, I just want the
Are you
house
talking
lights
about
up.
the last meeting that they had there?
Yeah, I thought the house
Two,
was up.
Okay, well,
two,
we're running
yeah,
it.
schools.
I like Hope Valley.
You like Hope Valley?
Well, because it's closer to my house, but that's just,
Oh.
you know.
Let's do
I
it.
don't know.
I don't think you-
Hope Valley's okay.
I don't think you'd have issues here. We saw at the last meeting at Charahoe that I don't think people really turn out planning board like they do for town council.
You know, but this is a great meeting. I would encourage them. I mean, if anybody wants to get up and speak to the planning board about solar or the town council, I would welcome them to come and be educated formally the way everybody else is. It's my opinion, you know? I mean, where everybody is like interneting their information together, and that's the argument, rather than have that kind of knowledge base talk to you about it. And it's not up for discussion, it's a free zone.
Let's go for the larger venue if we can do it. Hope Valley would be the preference.
Hope Valley.
If it can't be done, we'll take our chances here.
You have a screen at Hope Valley?
You say larger venue, not the Charo. You're talking Charo?
Rather than I would challenge.
We can go to Hope Valley Elementary,
Yeah, Ashway.
Ashaway, second choice,
Yeah,
Oh, Ashway.
Ashway.
Ashway's good.
Charo, third choice? Okay, well, I'll
Ashway.
go.
everybody-
Yeah, actually, Ashway's good too. We've had meetings in Ashway before and those were fun. So, because they put the tables down, as long as, he would need a projector, I suppose.
I think he comes with
He
those.
comes up, okay,
All right, say, we'll settle on
okay,
whatever you need.
good.
All right, so if we're gonna do that, then for those of us that have contacts of folks that might appreciate this kind of presentation, let's kick it out.
Yeah.
Because then we don't want 10 people to show up and we'll all be disappointed.
You have to publicly advertise that?
Yeah, it's a public meeting.
Pretty sure they'll get out.
Yeah, Secretary of State's office, yeah, public meeting, we'll post it in the town here, town hall.
That's it.
So, feel free to, email me any last thoughts you might have or questions, and I will get them over to Scott, so just send me an email. And,
And if you could just confirm that the first is gonna work for Scott. All right, good. Thank you for your consideration of that.
Correspondence and updates? Public comment. Thank you. Our date of our next regular meeting is October the 2nd. Should I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
This is a very nice plan.
Second, all in favor?
That's
Aye.